I never thought I'd find myself caught in the middle of wedding drama, especially not like this. It all started with Violet, a name that, in hindsight, sends shivers down my spine. Before her engagement, we were nothing more than casual acquaintances, bound by a few mutual friends and the occasional get-together. But that changed the moment she slipped a diamond ring onto her finger. Suddenly, Violet seemed determined to make me her new best friend. She insisted it was about wanting a closer bond, one that could carry us through her big day and beyond. I won't lie, I was flattered. Being included in her bridal party felt like an unexpected honor, even if it meant covering the costs for a lavish trip to Bali for her bachelorette party. At the time, I convinced myself that this was a chance to build a lasting friendship. But looking back, I can't shake the feeling that I was just a pawn in her grand wedding scheme. The trip to Bali was nothing short of a dream, at least on the surface. Between beachside cocktails, late-night heart-to-hearts, and endless laughter, it almost felt like Violet and I were truly bonding. But beneath the facade, there were cracks I chose to ignore. Like how she'd suddenly turn cold when the spotlight wasn't on her, or how she'd subtly hint that my presence was more of a convenience than a genuine desire for friendship. Still, I pushed those doubts aside. I wanted to believe that Violet was sincere, that this new chapter in our friendship was real. I even agreed to take on the role of her maid of honor when her sister couldn't make it. That's right, I was all in, ready to support her in every way I could. But then, everything changed with a single piece of news. When we returned home from that seemingly perfect trip, I discovered I was pregnant. My husband, Alex, and I were over the moon, but I knew it was still early days. We decided to keep it a secret until we were ready to share it with the world. However, I felt I owed Violet the truth, given that her wedding was just around the corner, and I didn't want my condition to be a surprise. I can still remember the look on her face when I told her. It was as if I had dropped a bombshell that shattered her perfectly curated world. Her smile faltered, her eyes went cold, and before I could even process it, she muttered a weak congratulations that felt more like a dismissal. I tried to laugh it off, thinking maybe she was just stressed from all the wedding planning. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. The next day, I woke up to a message from Violet that made my heart sink. She was disinviting me from the wedding. Her reason? "I just can't have any distractions on my special day," she said. "I hope you understand. Distractions." That's what my pregnancy was to her, a distraction. The words burned into my mind, leaving me reeling. I had sacrificed so much for her, covered her extravagant party expenses, and stood by her side through endless bridal fittings and rehearsals. And this is how she repaid me? I felt like I had been blindsided by someone I thought was a friend. But if she thought that was the end of it, she had another thing coming. I wasn't about to let her get away with treating me like this. Not without a fight. After Violet's cold message disinviting me from her wedding, I felt like I'd been sucker punched. It was as if all the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving me standing there, staring at my phone in disbelief. My hands were shaking, and my heart pounded in my chest.
How could she do this to me?
After everything I'd done for her? But the betrayal didn't end there. I tried calling Violet to understand what was happening, but my calls went straight to voicemail. Alex, my husband, was furious when he found out. "After everything we did for her, this is how she treats you," he fumed, pacing the living room like a caged lion. He wanted to confront her immediately, but I convinced him to let me handle it. I wasn't ready to throw gasoline on this fire just yet. I decided to send her a carefully worded message, hoping to clear the air. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe she was just stressed with the wedding planning. I wrote, "Hey Violet, I'm really hurt by your decision to uninvite me. I thought we were closer than that. If this is about my pregnancy, I promise I won't let it overshadow your day. Can we please talk?" I hit send, my heart pounding as I waited for a response. But hours turned into days, and there was nothing but silence. Then, finally a reply came through. But it wasn't the olive branch I'd hoped for. "I appreciate you reaching out, but I've made my decision. I just don't think having a pregnant woman at my wedding is the right vibe. You have to understand, this is my special day, and I want everything to be perfect. No hard feelings." No hard feelings? I felt my blood boiling. Her wedding was in less than a month, and she was acting like I was some random guest she could just toss aside. I was done playing nice. I told Alex everything, and he was livid.
That's it, he said.
We're done with her. You need to ask for the money back from the Bali trip. She can't just use you and toss you aside like this. Honestly, I hadn't even thought about the money. But now that he mentioned it, I realized how much I had poured into that trip. Flights, accommodations, fancy dinners. I'd covered it all because Violet claimed she was saving for the wedding. It wasn't a small amount either. I was out over $2,000, all for someone who just kicked me out of her bridal party, without a second thought. I sent Violet another message, this one far less friendly than the first. Since you decided to uninvite me from the wedding, I think it's only fair that you reimburse me for the expenses I covered for your bachelorette trip. I wouldn't have gone if I'd known how this would end up. Again, I was met with radio silence. But this time, it didn't take days for her to respond. Instead, she called me, something she hadn't done in weeks. The moment I picked up, she started screaming at me, her voice shrill and unrecognizable. How dare you ask me for money now? You're being petty and vindictive. I thought you were better than this. I held the phone away from my ear, stunned at the venom in her voice. I tried to stay calm, but I couldn't stop myself from firing back. Petty? You used me for free services and then dumped me the second I wasn't convenient for you anymore. I don't owe you anything, Violet. If you're not going to pay me back, I'll take it as a lesson learned. The call ended with her hanging up on me. My hands were still shaking as I put the phone down, my mind racing. But if Violet thought I was done, she was sorely mistaken. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me without a fight. That night, I tossed and turned, replaying every moment in my mind. How had things gone so wrong so fast? I had been genuinely excited to stand by her side as she walked down the aisle. And now we were practically at war. But things were about to get even messier. A few days later, one of Violet's other bridesmaids, Jessica, reached out to me. I was hesitant to respond at first, expecting more drama, but what she told me caught me completely off guard. I don't know if you've heard, but Violet's been telling everyone about your pregnancy, Jessica said, her voice dripping with sympathy. She's been saying that you got pregnant on purpose to steal her spotlight. I was speechless. It felt like the ground had just been ripped out from under me. Not only had Violet uninvited me from her wedding, but now she was spreading malicious rumors behind my back. I could barely process what I was hearing. Why would she do that? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I think she's just jealous, Jessica admitted. A lot of the other bridesmaids are upset with her, too. We were all rooting for you. We know you wouldn't do something like that. Hearing that gave me a glimmer of hope. Maybe I wasn't as alone in this as I thought. But at the same time, it lit a fire under me. If Violet wanted a war, she was going to get one. That night, Alex and I made a decision. We were done being nice, done being walked all over. If Violet wanted to play dirty, we were ready to match her. But we weren't just going to fight back. We were going to hit her where it hurt. The next morning, I posted on social media a polite yet firm statement about why I would no longer be attending Violet's wedding. I didn't go into details, but I made it clear that it was her choice, not mine. The backlash was immediate. Friends and family members flooded my DMs, wanting to know the full story. Then came the messages from Violet's friends. I had no idea she was treating you like this, one of them confessed. If I'd known, I never would have agreed to be her bridesmaid. Another friend even admitted she was considering backing out of the wedding entirely. Violet tried to do damage control, but the more she fought back, the worse it got. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. But the real tipping point came when Alex received a message from Violet's own mother of all people. I'm so sorry for how Violet has been acting, she wrote. Please don't hold this against our family. We'd still love to have you at the wedding. I was stunned. Even her own family was turning against her? This was bigger than I'd imagined. And as the wedding date drew closer, it was becoming clear that Violet was losing control of the narrative she'd so carefully crafted. But this was far from over. There was still one more card I had left to play, one that would change everything. I thought things had hit rock bottom, but I was wrong. Violet wasn't done with her tantrums just yet. In the days following my social media post, things escalated to a level I never anticipated. I expected backlash from her, but what I didn't expect was the sheer level of pettiness she would descend to. It started with whispers. Violet began spreading outright lies, telling anyone who would listen that I had intentionally planned my pregnancy to sabotage her wedding. She claimed I had been jealous of her moment in the spotlight and that this was my twisted way of stealing her thunder. It was absurd, but gossip has a funny way of spreading like wildfire, especially when it's juicy enough. Suddenly, I was getting calls from mutual friends, some of whom had the audacity to question my intentions. "I just think it's a bit coincidental, don't you?" one of them asked. "You get pregnant right before her wedding? I mean, come on." The betrayal stung, but I bit my tongue. It was clear that Violet had gone full scorched earth, and I wasn't going to stoop to her level. At least, not yet. But when Jessica, the bridesmaid who had initially reached out to me, sent me screenshots of a group chat where Violet was mocking my pregnancy, I knew I couldn't just sit back and take it anymore. "She's calling you the baby mama drama behind your back," Jessica revealed. "And she's telling everyone that you're making up stories about being uninvited just to get attention." That was the final straw. I could handle her excluding me from her wedding, but spreading rumors and dragging my unborn child into her spiteful games was too much. My initial instinct was to confront her directly, but Alex had a different idea. "We need to play it smart," he said, his eyes narrowing with a look I'd never seen before. "If she wants to play dirty, let's give her a taste of her own medicine. But we're going to do it on our terms." We started gathering evidence. Every nasty message, every lie she told, and every bridesmaid who was willing to speak up. We documented it all. Violet had no idea what was coming her way, and we were determined to expose her true colors. I reached out to a few of the other bridesmaids, and it didn't take much convincing for them to share their stories. It turned out I wasn't the only one she'd burned. She'd been treating everyone around her like disposable props in her perfect wedding fantasy. Meanwhile, Alex decided to take a stand of his own. He contacted the venue where Violet's wedding was supposed to take place, politely informing them that we had sponsored several deposits for the bachelorette trip that she had promised to repay but never did. Technically, we didn't have a direct link to the wedding venue's finances, but the mere implication of financial instability sent ripples through her carefully planned day. Word got back to Violet almost immediately. She exploded in a flurry of angry texts, threatening to sue us for defamation and accusing me of trying to ruin her wedding. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was the one who had dragged my name through the mud first. But the real kicker came when I received an unexpected message from Violet's fiancé, Brian. "I don't know what's been going on between you and Violet, but I think I deserve to know the truth," he wrote. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of how much to reveal. But then I remembered all the lies she had spread about me. So I sent him everything, the screenshots, the messages, the proof of her smear campaign against me. There was radio silence for a few days, during which Violet was eerily quiet. I thought maybe she'd finally come to her senses. But no. Instead, she doubled down. I woke up one morning to find a barrage of posts from Violet, accusing me of trying to seduce her fiancé. "Some people just can't handle being second best," she wrote, tagging me in every post. It's sad, really. I couldn't believe the audacity. It was one thing to slander me behind closed doors, but to publicly accuse me of something so vile? That was a new low, even for her. But her plan backfired spectacularly. As the saying goes, give someone enough rope, and they'll hang themselves. The other bridesmaids, fed up with her toxic behavior, started withdrawing from the wedding one by one. Jessica was the first to go, posting her own statement about how she couldn't stand by someone who was willing to destroy a friend's life just to stay in the spotlight. The domino effect was instantaneous. By the end of the week, half of her bridal party had quit, and Violet was scrambling to save face. The tipping point came when Violet's own family began to turn against her. Her mother reached out to me again, this time pleading for forgiveness on behalf of her daughter. "Please, I'm begging you," she said, her voice breaking over the phone. "I don't know what's gotten into her, but this isn't the Violet I raised. She's under so much stress. She's just not thinking clearly. I wanted to feel sympathy, but it was hard to forget the cruelty Violet had shown me. I politely declined her mother's request to reconcile, explaining that I had no interest in being part of their family drama anymore. But the chaos didn't stop there. Rumors started swirling that Violet and Brian's relationship was on the rocks. Apparently, he wasn't thrilled with her obsessive need to control every aspect of their wedding and her life. The stories I'd shared with him had planted seeds of doubt that were now growing into full-blown mistrust. I heard from Jessica that there were screaming matches behind closed doors, and it wasn't long before Brian was seen without his engagement ring. But the final nail in the coffin came when Violet tried to stage a makeup event, inviting everyone she had wronged to a last-minute bridal brunch, claiming it was all just a misunderstanding. The invite came with a long-winded apology that was more about saving face than actually making amends. I didn't attend, of course, but I heard through the grapevine that it was a disaster. Half the guests didn't show up, and those who did were treated to a meltdown of epic proportions when Violet realized her charm had worn thin. She screamed at her bridesmaids, accused them of betrayal, and even threw a champagne flute across the room in a fit of rage. By now, I had washed my hands of the whole ordeal, content to watch her implode from the sidelines. But there was still one part of me that couldn't let go of the hurt. It wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about the betrayal, the lies, and the toxic friendship that had unraveled so quickly. And as the wedding date loomed closer, I knew I had one last move to make. Violet wasn't going to get away with this unscathed. The wedding date was fast approaching, and while Violet tried her best to put up a front of normalcy, it was clear her perfect day was on the verge of collapse. The once grand wedding plans were falling apart piece by piece. From the outside, it looked like everything was still on track, but behind the scenes, it was pure chaos. Mutual friends were constantly updating me on the latest drama, and I couldn't help but be a bit satisfied seeing her life unravel after everything she put me through. A week before the wedding, I received a message from one of Violet's cousins, Olivia, who had heard about the fallout between us. Apparently, Violet had been bad-mouthing me to anyone who would listen, but Olivia wasn't buying it. Honestly, I've always thought Violet was kind of a control freak, she confided. And I'm starting to see what everyone's been saying about her. Turns out, Violet's family was more divided than I realized. Her brother had already threatened to skip the wedding, citing how her bridezilla behavior was tearing the family apart. Meanwhile, her father, who was financing most of the wedding, was fed up with her demands, especially after she decided to change the venue at the last minute, costing him thousands of extra dollars. But the real bombshell came just 3 days before the wedding. Jessica, my bridesmaid ally, sent me a voice note. "You're not going to believe this," she began, a hint of shock and excitement in her voice. "Brian called off the wedding." I had to replay the message twice to make sure I heard it right. Apparently, the stress and endless drama had finally gotten to him. According to Jessica, he couldn't handle Violet's constant outbursts, her need for control, and the way she treated everyone around her. He had packed his bags and left the apartment they shared, leaving Violet in a state of utter disbelief. As if on cue, I got a frantic call from Violet herself later that evening. Her voice was a mix of desperation and fury. "I know you're behind this," she screamed, not even bothering to say hello. "You turned everyone against me. You ruined everything." I was stunned into silence for a moment, not expecting to hear from her after everything that had transpired. "Violet, I didn't do anything," I replied, trying to stay calm. "You managed to alienate everyone all on your own." She didn't take that well, to say the least. Her tirade continued for a solid 5 minutes, filled with accusations, insults, and even threats. She claimed that if Brian didn't marry her, it would be all my fault and that I'd regret ever crossing her. She even insinuated she would sue me for the cost of the wedding, as if I somehow had control over her fiancé's decision to walk away. After hanging up on her, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, because this whole nightmare seemed like it was finally coming to an end, but also a bit of pity for Violet. She had brought this all upon herself, but it was still sad to see someone self-destruct so spectacularly. However, Any sympathy I might have felt quickly evaporated when Jessica called me again with even more news. Apparently, Violet had gone into full-on damage control mode. She called up her wedding planner and demanded they push the wedding back by a week, claiming it was just a minor hiccup and that Brian would come around. But when the planner gently suggested that maybe it was time to let it go, Violet lost it. She fired the planner on the spot, leaving her with no team to handle the last-minute preparations. As the wedding day arrived, or rather the day it was supposed to happen, the venue was deserted. There were rumors that Violet still showed up in her wedding dress, waiting for Brian to miraculously appear, but no one could confirm it. What I did know was that she had sent out a mass text to everyone on the guest list, insisting that the wedding was still on and that she and Brian were just having a little spat. But the drama didn't end there. That evening, I received yet another message, this time from Brian's sister, Megan, who had never really been a fan of Violet to begin with. Megan informed me that Violet had been trying to bribe Brian into coming back by offering to pay for a honeymoon anywhere in the world, all expenses covered. She even went as far as promising to change her last name to his immediately, which was something she had previously refused to do. Brian, however, had had enough. Megan told me he was staying with her for the time being, trying to figure out what to do next. He had already informed Violet's parents that there would be no wedding, which apparently sent Violet into another rage. At this point, her parents were done trying to mediate and just wanted to cut their losses. Feeling a bit vindicated, I decided to put this whole saga behind me and focus on my own happiness. I was ready to move on, especially with the baby on the way, and I didn't need Violet's negativity affecting my life any longer. But just when I thought the drama was over, I got one last surprise. I was sitting in the living room with Alex, enjoying a rare moment of peace, when we got a knock on the door. It was Olivia, Violet's cousin, looking frazzled and out of breath. "You need to see this," she said, thrusting her phone into my hands. On the screen was a video of Violet at what looked like a dive bar, screaming at Brian in front of a crowd of onlookers. "You're nothing without me," she yelled, slamming her hand on the table. "You think you can just leave me? I made you who you are." The video went viral within hours, with people across social media picking apart every detail. Some defended her, claiming it was a cry for help, while others tore her to shreds for her behavior. It was a public meltdown unlike anything I'd ever seen, and it was clear that Violet's reputation was in tatters. The last I heard, Violet had retreated to her parents' house, where she was supposedly taking time to reflect. But with all the bridges she had burned, it seemed unlikely she'd be able to bounce back anytime soon. As for Brian, he moved on swiftly, deleting every trace of Violet from his life, both online and offline. For me, this whole experience was a cautionary tale about toxic friendships and the lengths some people will go to maintain a facade of perfection. I realized that I had been too forgiving, too willing to overlook red flags in the name of keeping the peace. But not anymore. This ordeal taught me to value myself and not let anyone, no matter how close, take advantage of my kindness. And as I watched the final remnants of Violet's perfect life crumble, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. She had tried to destroy my happiness, but in the end, she had only destroyed her own. After Violet's outburst at Brian's party, when the video of her yelling at him went viral, everything spiraled out of control. She went from being the adored bride-to-be to the subject of gossip and scorn. The video spread like wildfire across social media, with everyone offering their opinions, some sympathetic, others mocking. I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction watching her unravel. Violet's perfect wedding, her grand celebration, was crumbling in front of her eyes. Her attempt to control the narrative had backfired, and suddenly she was the one losing everything she'd worked so hard to manipulate. I thought about reaching out to her, but what would I even say? "Sorry about your wedding? Hope you're doing okay?"
No.
The truth was I didn't care anymore. For weeks, I had been dealing with her toxic behavior, tiptoeing around her like she was some fragile thing that needed constant attention. But I wasn't her emotional caretaker, and I refused to let her make me feel like I owed her anything anymore. Yet, as time passed, I found myself thinking about the moment when I decided to cut ties with her. Alex and I had talked about it for hours, debating whether I should try to reconcile or just let it go. In the end, we both knew the answer. It was time to stop being her doormat. Violet had never truly been a friend. She had used me, and I had allowed it, hoping that things would get better, hoping that maybe she would change. But she didn't. She was never going to. A week after the blow-up, I was walking with Alex in the park when I got the message. It wasn't from Violet. She still hadn't contacted me directly. Instead, it was from Megan, Brian's sister. I had always respected Megan. She had been one of the few people in Violet's circle who wasn't afraid to speak the truth, and I appreciated that. "Hey, I just wanted to check in," the message read. "I know things have been crazy lately. Brian and I are both on the same page about this whole mess. We're not okay with how Violet has treated you. You didn't deserve any of this, and we're both so sorry." I couldn't believe what I was reading. Megan, of all people, was offering an apology on behalf of Violet. It felt surreal, like something out of a bad movie. But it also felt validating. Maybe I wasn't crazy. Maybe I hadn't imagined all of Violet's manipulative behavior. Maybe everyone else was starting to see her for who she really was. Despite the validation, I couldn't shake the feeling that Violet wasn't truly sorry. She was sorry she got caught, not sorry for how she treated people. And that's when I realized that her entire world was built on lies, and I didn't want to be part of it anymore. The following day, I received another message, this time from Violet's mother. I wasn't sure why, but I opened it. "I know you're hurt, and I understand if you don't want to hear from me. But Violet is really struggling. I'm asking you, as a mother, to please think about giving her one more chance. She's upset, and this whole thing has spiraled out of control. She's truly sorry." I stared at the message for a long time, feeling a strange mix of anger and pity. How could they still defend her? After everything she'd done, after all the lies and manipulation, they still wanted me to just forgive her because she was upset? I couldn't. I just couldn't. Violet had pushed me too far, and now it was my turn to take a stand. I wasn't going to let her use me as a scapegoat to fix her mess. That afternoon, I spoke to Alex again, and we both agreed it was time to move on. There was nothing left for me in that friendship. I had given more than enough, and Violet had proven time and time again that she wasn't interested in anything real. I had to protect myself now, my family, and my peace. The next morning, I received a call from Megan. She was calm, direct, and honest. "I've been thinking about everything, and I just want you to know, I think you made the right decision. Violet has a way of making everything about her, and honestly, I don't know if she'll ever change. But you don't need to carry that burden." Her words were like a weight lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was finally allowed to let go of all the anger and hurt. Megan was right. Violet had made everything about her for so long, and now that the truth was out, it was her turn to face the consequences. In the end, Violet's wedding was called off, but it didn't matter. The show was over for her. She lost more than just a party. She lost friends, trust, and respect. I had my own life to live now, and that didn't include toxic people who only brought chaos and heartache. Alex and I decided to take a trip, just the two of us. No drama, no stress, just us, enjoying our time together. We went on a small getaway to a quiet cabin by the lake, far from the noise of everything that had happened. The tranquility of it all reminded me of how much I had been holding on to. But I was free now. Free to live the life I deserved, free from Violet's drama, and free from the grip of guilt that had held me hostage for so long. When we returned from the trip, everything felt different. It was like the weight of Violet's world had finally been lifted from my shoulders. I had faced her toxicity head-on and walked away unscathed, stronger than before. As for Violet, well, the last I heard, she was still trying to salvage whatever she could of her shattered life. But that wasn't my concern anymore. What mattered now was my future, the future I was building with Alex, our growing family, and the real friends who had always supported me. And in the end, that was all I needed to move forward. Looking back, I can see just how much I had let Violet manipulate me. I let her drain my energy, my time, and my peace of mind. But this experience taught me something invaluable. I will never again let someone like Violet into my life. Life is too short to keep toxic people around. And now that I know my worth, I can finally start building the life I deserve.